2019 was a record year for store closures, and as you can imagine, 2020 will surpass it by far. The effects of the crisis of 2020 will reverberate for a while and cannot be reversed by government stimulus. It's simply illogical and impossible. There is something that must be understood. What we are seeing today is the asymmetrical global economic collapse. Get ready. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at what has been happening throughout the world. It is very important to understand at its core where all of this begins. I'm going to show you the details that you need to know. Look at what's going on today. You see the earth rumbling. I wrote about this in my second book. In fact, I put it on the very back cover and I said, soon the earth will rumble on the heels of the angry mobs. And that was going on big time throughout 2019. There have been different uprisings, of course, throughout the years, but it's becoming more and more prevalent as we see different issues start to spring up. Could be one thing or the other, but ultimately, when you have a big divide in between the haves and the have-nots, in between the rich and the poor, that only makes things worse, and it continues to grow, in fact. If you look at a lot of developing nations, they experience this more frequently, but today we are seeing that everywhere. It seems to be a common theme. Look at the major cities around the world, and they're always in a state of eruption, and that is very bad for the stability, for the growth, and of course for the economy. Now, I want to look at a few issues today, but I wanted to begin by taking a look at this. As I mentioned during the introduction, I've always followed what has happened with the store closures, and I give you that data primarily from a company called Coresight. Well, now they have a prediction for 2020, and it's not looking good. Let's take a look at what they had to say. Coresight Research, which tracks retail openings and closings, has upped its projected store closures for 2020 from 8,000, that was at the beginning of the year, to 15,000 at the beginning of March, and now 25,000. 25,000 stores. This far surpasses anything that has been seen. In fact, that's the quote. That's unlike anything the industry has ever seen. It's the speed with which it's all happening which has been a little surprising. But there's no stopping the bankruptcies now. She predicted that retail, the number of June bankruptcies will double May bankruptcies, and that is not a good sign. These have been growing tremendously over the last few weeks, and as I have explained to you, all of this has a ripple effect. It has an impact in things that you don't see right by looking at it. You have to read between the lines. You have to start digging. You have to connect the dots. And that's what we do here. At least that's what I try to do. And I know you appreciate that. At the bottom, that doesn't necessarily mean those companies will go out of business. That doesn't necessarily mean those companies will go out of business. Bankruptcy can serve as a place of refuge for struggling companies offering the chance to shed unsustainable debt, close unprofitable stores, and restructure operations. This is important to note. I've talked about it. For instance, you have a company like Sears or JCPenney. They can close a bunch of their stores. They can liquidate their inventory. But what they don't mention here is the fact that if you can't get your store open, how are you going to liquidate inventory? Meanwhile, you're burning through the cash, so it makes it worse. The longer this drags on for, which it seems like it will be quite some time, the worse things will be. And people have pointed out in many cases, when you look at the stock market, at least a subsect of that, let's say the tech stocks, they have moved up considerably. But you look at the economy and it has not moved in the way that they said. They said it would be a V-shaped recovery. That hasn't happened whatsoever. We need to understand the distinction in between the economy and the stock market and know that these are not the same thing. These are far from the same thing. The indications that we've been getting all along have made that very clear. I certainly believe and have really displayed the evidence over the years that the Federal Reserve, and more specifically central banks in every country, have created inequality. But if you ask Jerome Powell, he would say quite the opposite. Powell says Fed policies absolutely don't add to inequality. And this is coming from Bloomberg, and it's important because it is quite a lie. When you look at the details of all of this, it is very clear that central banks create inequality because of the way that the system works. It's not as if they're printing money and giving it directly to people. No, no, no. They funnel it through the system, and ultimately it doesn't get to the individual, or at least not in a way that would actually be productive or would be beneficial. And this is something that we know. We know this already, but the way that it works is designed really purposefully in the way that they have been engaging in all of this. Look at all of their different alphabet, special purpose vehicle, all these different things that they have created has only further intensified the problems. Look at all of this really objectively and you will see it for yourself. When you understand they print $2 trillion in a matter of something like 5 weeks, and then you have people going more and more into debt. You have bankruptcies increasing. You have all of the bad news piling up. Meanwhile, they're printing an unprecedented level of money. Something doesn't add up, and it is very clear right now more than ever before. I've already done a video about this, but essentially what we're looking at is the Federal Reserve and what they actually purchased, because there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of hearsay, but when I give you the facts, I give you the facts. Of course, I'm going to put all of the links in the description. You could see the sources for yourself. This is from the federalreserve.gov website if you're interested, or you can check the other video I did. But essentially what we're looking at here is the actual ETFs that the Federal Reserve purchased. And it's important to note all of this because you can see who stands to gain. In any situation, you must follow the money and you must see who stands to gain. The ETF sponsor left-hand side, Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, and of course, Deutsche Bank is on here too. But it's clear who the friends of the Federal Reserve are, and we know the details of all of these programs because we've been highlighting that over the past several weeks, in fact. You could see these different ETFs and know where the money is going. It's not going to you. It's not going to help you at all. In fact, it's going to help Wall Street. Wall Street stands to gain, but not like last time. And in this case here, people are swindled. They're fooled because they don't see the big bailouts going directly to JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and all these other players. No, they see it this way. The money comes in and it boosts these businesses up. And that's something that people have yet to make the connection in, and they won't. You know they won't because they see it as helping. This is a much better way to swindle everybody, and it's really going ahead as planned. US food prices see historic jump and are likely to stay high. This is when you have a big problem because all of that which has been going on in 2020, these big problems don't create temporary issues, they create lasting effects. And when you have all of the money that's been printed on top of that, you are creating price inflation. It may not show up directly, it may not show up right away, but this is the lasting effect. And it's unfortunate because who does this hurt? It hurts the people, let's say at the bottom 50%, where food makes up a larger percentage of their income, disposable income. And right now, that's a big issue because a lot of Americans are struggling. But look at the same situation in Canada, for instance. Massive drop right now in the growth. And you can also see millions of people that are struggling. Not a good sign. Europe, same thing. Australia, same thing. They're relying on everything going back to normal, but we know that isn't going to happen overnight. So we have to be prepared for this in advance. Many people just don't want to listen. This is huge news, and I really wanted to bring it to you in this video. 2/3 of public restaurants are seen at risk of bankruptcy. Again, bankruptcy doesn't mean they're going to disappear, but it does mean that people will lose their jobs and these companies will get hurt. Let's look at some of the details. Nearly 2/3 of publicly traded restaurants are at risk of bankruptcy as the issue from 2020 batters the industry. The concern is higher for small companies and restaurants that specialize in dine-in. As they say in the next paragraph, it's really the full service model that's in the biggest danger. Some of those that are in casual dining, a lot of those had already been bleeding cash, bleeding locations. This is really unfortunate for everybody involved, and we know that this has been a problem because probably in your community today, we're seeing a lot of this coming up, and it is truly unfortunate. If you want to follow the information that's going on with restaurants specifically, OpenTable.com has a great resource that they've been putting together. And I wanted to show you this, give you an update on it. I did show you this multiple times before, but this is some new information and it is getting better slightly. I want to say slightly because it isn't so good when you look at it. But here is May 5th and May 8th actually. And if you look at how this has progressed, if we go in this direction here, we see it day by day by day, essentially a full shutdown, whether we're looking at it on a global level or Australia, Canada, and so on. And then we move to more recent data. The newest day on here is the 29th of May. And that just gives us an idea that, hey, things are getting a bit better. On a global level, it is 83% down. That's still really, really bad, of course, but it is progressing in the right direction. Where it's going to be in a month from now, who knows? It may actually go in the other direction once again, but I just wanted to give you the resource because you need to be checking into it on a fairly regular basis to know for yourself. I want to empower you to learn all this information because without this, we're only going to be relying on the mainstream, and that's never a good thing. Another resource to check out is eater.com, EATER.com, and they are actually updating this on a day-to-day basis, all of the companies that are going under, and I think it's interesting to see it all. It breaks it down basically by date as well as the area, and I should say specifically this is for New York. And you could see restaurant after restaurant after restaurant that's going under right now. Again, the company is affected, which is not very good in many cases, but you're also looking at the employees. The employees in this industry, where are they going to go now? If they were working in the restaurant business, whether they were the owner or maybe they were just an employee, where are they going to go? They have to go into something completely different. Maybe they've been doing that for 10 years and now their whole life is disrupted as a result. It's really, really bad the way that things are going right now, and I don't think it's going to get much better anytime soon in most places. According to Mitch McConnell, the next stimulus bill will be the final one. I don't know if that's actually the case. They want to make it seem like, hey, things are going to get better and we're not just going to keep going deficit spending. We're not just going to do this forever. So you need to figure it all out. You need to get things working. The Federal Reserve has to do their thing. The whole industries, all industries have to work together and so on. But we'll see what happens. There can be different types of stimulus that take place, but we're going to see this as it happens. I want to know because if it's $3 trillion, I don't know if the government could actually ever recover from that level of deficit on top of what they've already got in place. But they seem to believe that as long as they grow, they could eventually deal with it all. But that doesn't work like that when the growth is much slower than the amount of debt. So you have the debt and you have the growth or GDP, for instance, and these two are really, really creating a big chasm in between the two. Not a good thing. How in the world are they ever going to fix this problem? Of course, they can't. So anyway, the stimulus bill, look for that. I want to see what they do and how this actually impacts people. Last time around, $1,200 didn't really last too long. We'll see this time. I'll bring that to you as the information comes out. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you are supporting me. Thank you very much. If you want to check me out on Instagram, on Twitter, I'm doing stuff every day at The Money GPS. If you want to learn how to sell stuff online, you want to understand e-commerce, you just want to know about it a little more, but you don't want to pay any money, well, I've created a free e-course for you, the AmazonGPS.com. Understanding the financial system is a requirement because otherwise you're always going to be swindled. You're always going to be trying to catch up with the real deal, the real data. Well, these two books will get you where you need to be. Check them out at the link in the description if you want the audiobook, themoneygps.com. Don't go anywhere until you have seen this video. I break it down what you need to know, what the Federal Reserve is actually buying. Have you seen it yet? If not, click it. I'll see you there.